Welcome to another edition of the EPRC Podcast. We are coming to you from UCSD, where we've been at the ISCR 2023 Inaugural Annual Conference. It's been delightful. This is Sebastian. You want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. Yeah, my name is Sebastian Ehmann. I'm an international student from Germany. I did my undergrad in Nutritional Sciences. I have a master's in exercise science, and currently I'm doing my master's in psychology, so very interdisciplinary, at least for now. I want to apply to clinical psychology programs this year, so I have lots of stuff to do.
Awesome. Why do you want to do clinical psychology?
Honestly, because I think there's value in direct subjective experience, and I think since I can remember, I have been a scientist in a way. Like even as a little child, I always ask a bunch of questions. But I feel like even here in the conference, I sometimes feel like people are lost in like theoretical concepts, and I think there's value in like not only having your own experience, but also having the experience of other people. So clinical psychology, on the one hand, you're a clinician, on the other hand, you're a researcher. So that seems to be, for me, the only way to go forward as the next career step.
Good. And how did you get interested in emergent phenomena?
I was thinking about that when you asked me that earlier. And it's so interesting because it was like a very intuitive pull, but like I think I never really drew it out for myself. I'd say because first of all, for myself, I noticed how much that is related to suffering, not the emergent phenomena generating necessarily directly suffering. I don't mean it as a linear relationship, but also for a lot of people relieving suffering. So it can go both ways. And also you don't read anything whatsoever, in like mainstream psychology about that. And I think human experience shouldn't be pathologized, and there should be more understanding about emergent phenomena. So personally, it shaped my life, and I think it does for a lot of people. The EPRC has work done where they show how common emergent phenomena are, and nobody knows about it. There's just Eastern philosophies talking about it. But it seems so significant to me that it makes me really want to research it.
Well, nobody is sort of an interesting way of looking at it, right? I mean, as soon as we say that, we recognize that when you say something like nobody, you mean the secular scientific mainstream, which is actually only a small fraction of the world, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Right, and so it's interesting how the paradigm of an incredibly small group can then sort of, in our minds, get extrapolated to be the whole world.
Yeah.
And it's a weird amount of power that sometimes these sorts of paradigms or certain small select groups who have them can get in the academic, world. And so, figuring out how to decolonize, is a phrase that's been used a lot at this conference, some of that is really important, and all of our minds and the way we think about this and the way we relate to it.
I'm really happy that the EPRC itself, without, I don't know, maybe you can correct me, but there was like no direct intent of like pulling, diversity in, but diversity emerged out of itself because it was representative of, what is out there. And to me, this shows really that, it's not, like a single experience, but you have like a bunch of people who experience the same thing. And it shouldn't be about like a bunch of people who are maybe like, in some elite academic position, maybe giving all the guidelines about that. I totally agree. I think culture is a really important point, and developing context. And I feel like this conference is the best place for it because I talked to a lot of people where I didn't have any knowledge beforehand, and it definitely shapes the way of how I think about context.
It's definitely been a great conference, that's for certain.
It has been a great conference.
Yeah, amazing people doing amazing work. Yeah, it's been exciting to be here. So, cool. Where do you want to go next with your work in emergent phenomena?
So I'm the most interested in I guess altered states of consciousness in general, but particularly like meditation, mindfulness, and psychedelics. There's some interesting research from, I don't know if I pronounce them correctly, but Anil Seth from the UK. And I watched a webinar from him where he was talking about a dream machine they're having, where like people go in, a bunch of strangers, they have like a bunch of strange experiences, they come out, draw them out, and even without the intention of doing so, they have profound like positive mental health benefits. And I think there's no, at least like there's, in research, like people are usually, and as a part of research, super specific in what they do, but I think there needs to be a more systematic study of how altered states of consciousness can also help mental health. And I would like to draw these two different fields, psychedelics and mindfulness, in, because that seemed to be a really common conversation actually here at the conference, but at the same time it seems like there's very little place of people doing that, except people who are very established in the field and who share their opinions, but actual research going on in it is still very limited. So that's where I would like to go. I recognize that I always have I used to go very in depth with what I was interested in, and now it's like the opposite. I almost look at like the general gestalt of things, and I want to like see the whole more than like the single thing. So my interest spans like philosophy too, and like all of these things. And I noticed that in order to study that properly, I almost like need to zoom out more and more and more and more. So we will see where that goes. I could see myself branching off in other fields too afterwards.
Nice. Great. Anything else you want to talk about?
First of all, I'm really happy to have met the EPRC team members here.
It's an amazing bunch. We're really blessed to be part of this cool group.
It's an amazing bunch, and I feel like it is important for people to recognize that I think there are a lot of like initial judgments people project onto people, and I've never met so many like smart people in one group at the same time. So maybe just like listening and being open to like emergent phenomena, and like letting people study it in like a rigorous fashion is what we should do, instead of like immediately suppressing it.
Nice. Well, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, and so glad to have you as part of the EPRC.
Thank you, Daniel.
Yeah. One thing I would like to add is there are a lot of younger people in degree programs, establishing their careers in the EPRC, and that is so important because the inertia of the system we're trying to change is so high that it's really great that we've got people who will have decades, hopefully, of productive working lives. Yeah. Where they can really help take these changes to the clinical mainstream and the scientific mainstream in ways that eventually they relate to really skillfully and appreciate the work we've done.
And I would agree with that totally. And I would also say that for everybody who's interested, like, this is really not easy to maneuver. Like, I mean,
that is true.
As an international student, it's like it becomes even worse, but because these things are niche, and then at the same time also like some of these programs are super difficult to get into, I notice more and more there's like no safe way to do it, and it needs a lot of like passion to do it, because it needs a lot of energy and a lot of trust and a lot of faith in order to like actually continue going that way. It's much easier to just stick with regular research topics, for instance, and just like go that route. So it's definitely a journey I am like willing to help other people with, because I recognize that even within the EPRC it came up more often that a lot of people face the same struggles and a lot of people are interested in it, but there's really, outside of like some guidance of like you should be a good scientist in order to do that work. In my head I heard that like 10 times in this conference whenever I asked a person a question, and for me it's like, I don't want to be like not a good scientist, but like at the same time there are a lot of challenges, but I could see it also being very rewarding. So I hope a lot of people have the same mission and it goes that way.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, well, This has been another edition of the EPRC podcast. Thank you so much for watching and for your interest in the work of the EPRC and its members and related to emergent phenomena. All right.
All right.
Bye.
Thank you.